Hey guys, so today's goal is to graph linear equations. Now if you notice the word linear, the root word in linear is line. So that means every equation that we form is going to form a straight line. Every equation that we graph is going to have a straight line. Alright, now as a reminder, y equals kx. We talked about this in class, how that k, that's the constant, that's the number that is being multiplied or divided by every single time. Notice it's in front of the x, okay? Then over here we have our slope. Slope, remember, that's your rise over run, that's your y over x. Remember, that's how far you go up, how far you go over to get to the next point. Then you have something over here that you haven't seen before. That triangle means the change of. So this means the change of x over the change, the change of y over the change of x. That's just what is happening every time it moves to the next level. So what helps us get that is that y over x or rise over run. So now this is where all the magic happens in graphing an equation. First you have the form that it's called. It's called slope-intercept form. So slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. Memorize it. You're always going to need it. You're always going to use it. Okay? Now, first let's understand what everything stands for. The y and the x, they will not change. You don't really substitute anything in for them. The only things that are going to substitute numbers in is the m and the b. All right? Now, if you notice, there are similarities between y equals mx and the y equals kx. Now, they're in the same format. The only difference is m is the slope, y is the constant of proportionality. They're the same thing. So being that m is your slope, that's your y over x, your rise over run. I wrote it 3 different ways so you can realize that m, that's your movement. Remember, that's how far your line is steep. Okay? That determines how steep your line is. Then you have b. This is what we're adding on. b is called the y-intercept. Your y-intercept is your starting point on the y-axis. So that means when you start graphing, this is the first number that you're going to look for. The number that does not have an x attached to it, that's the number that's going to start your line off. So wherever that number is, that's what you're going to start graphing on the y-axis. All right, so let's go ahead and try one and write down the steps. Okay. So write down your steps first. Let me move it forward so the glare won't be on there. All right, so it has steps. So step number 1, you're going to graph your first point using the y-intercept on the y-axis. That's your first step. Your second step, from your first point, the one that you graphed on the y-axis, you're going to start your rise over run. Okay? You know, up and then over, or down and then over, down and then over. It just depends. Then you're going to continue on for 3 more points. So you want to make a nice healthy line. So you want to do 3 points so you can have 4 total, just to make sure that everything's going in the right direction. And then the last thing, it says connect your points. That says, let me lift it up a little bit, that says points right down there. All right, now make sure you copy down the steps. Now let's go ahead and graph. So the equation is y equals 1/2 x plus 2. As I said before, you're going to start here with that second number. This is your start on the y-axis. All right, so on the y-axis, we're going to go up to +2. And you're going to plot that point. That's your first point. You're done with your first point. Now, this is where the slope comes in. This is your rise over run. All right, that's your rise over run. So now, this means rise up 1, run over 2. That's what we're going to do from this point. All right, so you're going to go up 1, and that's at 3. Then you have to go to the right 2. 1 is positive, so that means I have to go up. 2 is positive, so that means I have to go to the right. So I'm going to go up 1 and then over 1, 2. And I plot the point. That now I'm at my second point. Okay? So from this point, the one that we just finished making, we're going to plot another point from the most recent one you just finished. So I'm going to, let me erase this over here. You may have more room in your notebook, but I need more room on the board. So from this point, we're going to go up 1, and then we're going to go to the right 1, 2, and we're going to plot that point. Then we're going to repeat, up 1 over 2. Make sure that they're in line. So now I've repeated it 3 times. Now all I need to do is connect, and you can have the line going through and have your arrows going on both sides, because that means that this slope, it goes on forever. This steepness, it goes on forever. Okay? All right, let's try another one. All right. It says graph y equals 2/3 x minus 3. Now, first let's identify, before we graph, let's identify. First, what is our slope? Our slope is the number that's in front of x. That's 2/3. And then our y-intercept, well, it says minus 3. Do you remember I told you about additive inverse, keep, change, change? You have to do that, because you have to recognize that that y-intercept is -3. So remember, we start with our y-intercept, which is -3. So I have to go down to -3 and plot the point. Now I go with my slope. My slope says rise 2, run over 3. So up 2, 1, 2, over 3. 1, 2, 3. Now repeat with the most recent point. Up 2, 1, 2, over 3. 1, 2, 3. Now, here's the thing. I've run out of space. This will happen. But let me tell you, you can go in the opposite direction and still be okay. This is the reason why. Our slope, let's say that's 2 over 3. Now, if I were to go down 2, all right, so that means -2. And if I were going to go to the left 3, that's a -3. -2 divided by -3 is a positive. So you can go down 2 and to the left 1, 2, 3 and still be on the same line, and you can have your four points without going off of your coordinate plane. So go ahead, connect your lines, make sure you arrow both ends. All right, let's try another one. All right, so this one, graph y equals -1/3 x plus 1. Let's go ahead and identify what we need. We need the slope. The slope is -1 over 3. Your starting point, your y-intercept, is 1. All right, so let's start. We start on the y-axis at +1 and we plot the point. Now, knowing our rise and run rules, this says you're going to rise negatively and then you're going to run to the right. So if it says rise -1, we're going to start from our starting point right here at +1, go down 1, and then to the right 1, 2, 3. Then we go again, down 1 and to the right 1, 2, 3. I'm off of my graph, I'm off of the coordinate plane, so I go the opposite way. Now if it was -1 over 3, let's say I need to go the opposite way to get me an extra point. I go up 1, I do a +1. Instead of going to the right, I go to the left. Make that a -3, because guess what? It's still going to mean the same thing. They are equal. So I go up 1 to the left, 1, 2, 3. And then you have your 4 points and you've graphed your line. Now, we're going to practice more of these in class. Make sure your parents sign your notes. See you in class.